You know that feeling when your smartphone just starts acting like incredibly sluggish? The battery is draining in under an hour, the screen stutters every time you swipe, and apps just mysteriously crash the second you try to open them.
Oh, it's infuriating. I mean, you realize there are probably 50 different background apps running
Yeah.
simultaneously, right? Just quietly eating up all the device's processing power, pinging servers, downloading updates, and you have absolutely no idea what any of them are actually doing.
Yeah, exactly. And the only real fix is to just perform a hard factory reset. You wipe the slate clean, clear out the hidden junk, and force the entire operating system back to its original unburdened baseline.
Right.
So that is exactly the mission for today's deep dive. We are essentially exploring a manual factory reset, but for the human mind. We're unpacking this really fascinating translated spiritual text called the Morning Sutra. It was originally written by Su Feng, and the translation we're analyzing today was edited by Kinyu.
Yeah, and right out of the gate, the stated purpose of the text is incredibly clear. The author writes, I have compiled a set of short scriptures that can help calm your restless mind and spirit.
Which is, I mean, such a universal and urgent need right now. We all have those mental background apps constantly running. Low-level anxieties about our career trajectories, social obligations, the endless news cycle.
Oh, financial pressures for sure.
Right. And what this specific sutra offers is a methodology for self-improvement and cultivation by deliberately identifying and force quitting those draining cognitive processes.
And actually, it's probably worth taking a moment to define what a sutra really is,
Yeah.
because it's not just a standard book chapter or a narrative essay.
Good point. Yeah.
Historically, sutras are strings of aphorisms. They're designed structurally to be read slowly, chanted, or meditated upon. So the very act of engaging with the text's rhythm is, well, it's supposed to induce that baseline reset.
The structural design of it is wild, though, because when you start reading, it honestly gives you a bit of whiplash.
Oh, totally. Like, the text opens with these incredibly vast cosmic images. The infinite universe, dimensions of existence, roaming in fairylands. But then, almost without warning, it turns into this grounded, practically ruthless critique of modern hustle culture.
Yeah, it really does.
It goes from floating in the heavens right down to the dirt in a matter of paragraphs.
Well, that abrupt transition from the cosmic to the concrete is absolutely deliberate. It's an established psychological technique in spiritual literature. Like,
Sure.
if we're going to absorb the practical life advice, we first have to understand the specific baseline perspective the author is trying to force us into. I mean, you cannot fix a hyperfixation problem while you are still hyperfixated.
Right. So the opening lines certainly do not play small. The sutra begins, quote, the vast, distant heavens know my heart. The myriad gods in the darkness know my name. The operation of the sun and moon is aware of my deeds.
Yeah. And then it talks about how the mysteries of the universe are infinite and how the ultimate goal is to break through the three dimensions to roam freely in a wonderful fairyland. As a reader, you were just instantly ripped out of your living room and thrown right into the cosmos.
Well, consider why the text scales up so massively in the first, 20 seconds of reading. If the goal is to calm a restless mind, you have to look at what generates that restlessness.
Which is almost always our tendency to magnify finite, immediate problems, right?
Exactly. A looming deadline feels like life or death. But by immediately framing our temporary human lives against the infinite, endless operation of what the text calls the Tao, which is the fundamental, unchangeable nature and flow of the universe, our individual anxieties are proportionally shrunk down to size.
It's forced perspective. Standing next to the literal operation of the sun and the moon makes the awkward email you sent yesterday feel appropriately irrelevant.
Totally irrelevant.
But I do have to push back on this opening a bit, or at least ask the question that anyone reading this would inevitably ask. We zoom out to this wonderful fairyland, which sounds beautifully ethereal. It sounds like a magical state of being where nothing matters and you just float.
Right.
But just a few lines later, the author drops a really blunt reality check. He says, the sky does not drop pies. Trees do not bear gold.
Yeah, I love that line.
It's so jarring. First, we're breaking through dimensions, and the next second, we're getting a lecture about how nobody's handing out free lunches.
Yeah.
How do we square that cosmic magic with the tough love?
So the author is preemptively destroying a very common misunderstanding of spiritual enlightenment. The fairyland state, which we can sort of interpret here as a completely calm, untroubled, highly capable mind, it isn't achieved through some sudden magical intervention.
Oh, okay.
The heavens knowing your heart doesn't mean the heavens are going to do the work for you or, drop pies from the sky. The peace is achieved exclusively through compounding daily habits.
Which brings to mind that quote from the text, "Follow the natural course. Water flows and forms a stream." And that's paired with, "Diligent every day, trees grow into a forest."
Exactly.
It's entirely removing the expectation of a quick mystical fix. You don't just teleport to the fairyland, you grow a forest, one tree at a time.
Let's actually unpack the physics of that water flows metaphor for a second,
Uh-huh.
because it contains the entire mechanism of the sutra's philosophy. Think about how water behaves in nature. It doesn't hustle. It doesn't stress out about the rock in its path.
Right, it doesn't use cunning to figure out how to, hack its way around a boulder.
Exactly. It simply yields, it takes the path of least resistance, and it maintains a continuous, steady pressure. Yet, through that quiet, daily diligence, water possesses the immense power to carve out the Grand Canyon. That is the exact mechanism of effort the text is advocating for.
So if water models this effortless, patient flow that ultimately carves out canyons, I feel like we need to look at why we humans are walking around so exhausted. Because we are certainly not flowing.
No, we are definitely not.
And this leads right into the sutra's warnings about how we spend our energy. The text explicitly states, busy hustle does not equate to diligence. And then it adds this incredible line, using cunning does not count as cleverness, striving for victory wastes time.
Striving for victory wastes time. I mean, try putting that on a motivational poster in a corporate boardroom today. It is a radically countercultural statement.
Oh, it actively attacks our whole way of life. We're a society completely obsessed with inbox zero, packing our calendars with back-to-back meetings, and just endlessly optimizing our routines.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll admit, last month I spent a whole week trying to optimize my morning coffee routine to save maybe 40 seconds.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah. I was buying new gadgets, timing the exact boil of the water. I thought I was being so clever. But the mental energy I burned trying to hack my morning was infinitely more exhausting than just standing there waiting for the water to boil.
Right. You were using cunning, but you weren't being clever.
Exactly. The sutra is calling out this modern busy hustle as a total illusion. It says pursuing desires makes it hard to understand life.
And what your coffee optimization story highlights is the profound difference the text establishes between busyness and actual cultivation. Cultivation, like the water, is natural and unforced.
Right.
The text instructs the reader to be not arrogant, not impatient, and not anxious, not angry. We should be not seizing, not competing.
So are you suggesting there's a functional difference between caring about the results of the game versus caring about how you actually play the game?
That is the perfect way to frame it. When you're caught in the busy hustle, the rat race, you are constantly evaluating yourself against external metrics.
Like, am I winning? Are they ahead of me? Is my coffee routine faster than my neighbors?
Exactly. Fame and fortune, the text warns, confuse human nature and mix truth and falsehood. You lose your internal bearings because you're relying on an external scorecard that is just constantly changing.
Which explains the incredible psychological relief offered later in the text to counter this exact exhaustion.
The part about the referee.
Yes. The author writes, "Right and wrong are not for me to judge. Good and evil are discerned by divine." It is this amazing invitation to completely resign as the referee of the universe.
And dropping that heavy burden of constant judgment is arguably the most effective way to close those mental background apps we talked about at the beginning. You no longer have to process every single interaction through the filter of, well, did I win or lose this exchange?
Right. So, okay, if we drop the scorecard, if we abandon the cunning and we resign as the referee of the universe,
Yeah.
what actually fills the hours of the day? Because the trees still need to grow into a forest, the diligence is still required.
Yeah, you can't just do nothing.
Right. And I was honestly surprised by the practical toolkit the sutra provides here, because it doesn't tell you to go sit in a cave for 10 hours.
Yeah.
It gives a very specific two-step formula.
It does.
And step one is incredibly straightforward. As among the myriad affairs of life, reading is the most important.
Which honestly often disappoints readers who are looking for some highly esoteric secret meditation technique.
But the mechanism behind why reading is the most important tool is fascinating. The text says reading clarifies principles. And when principles are clear, doing things naturally succeeds. But how does sitting down with a book actually armor someone against the anxiety of hustle culture?
Well, think about the cognitive process of reading a book, especially deeply philosophical or complex material. It forces your brain to slow down and follow a single, sustained narrative thread. It is the literal antithesis of modern multitasking.
Oh, that makes sense.
So, when the text says reading clarifies principles, it means that exposing yourself to enduring wisdom builds a psychological anchor. If the external world is constantly mixing truth and falsehood with the lure of fame and fortune, reading recalibrates your internal compass.
So it removes the friction from your daily decision-making because your principles are clear. You don't need cunning when you know exactly what your values are.
You hit the nail on the head.
So step 1 is curating your internal input. Step 2 is about your external input, the people around you. The text says, next, seek good friends. But it specifies that these aren't just people to grab a drink with, they are confidants. The imagery here is really striking. It says these confidants help you find your way back when lost, turning loneliness into fairyland.
Notice how the concept of the fairyland has completely evolved here.
It totally shifted. Because in the opening lines, the fairyland seemed like this distant cosmic dimension we had to break through space to reach. But here, the sutra is arguing that you construct the fairyland right here on Earth, just by having confidants who hold you accountable to your own principles.
Yeah, it reveals the text's deeply held view on the porous nature of the human mind. We are highly susceptible to our surroundings. This is what modern psychology would basically call environmental design.
I was really hoping we would touch on that because the sutra has this incredibly poetic phrasing for environmental design. It says, near the mountains you recognize bird sounds, near the water you know fish nature, and then it adds, worship Buddha to attain Buddha nature. You literally become a product of whatever you place yourself in proximity to.
We absorb our proximity. If you surround yourself with the frantic energy of the busy hustle, you will unconsciously adopt an anxious, competitive baseline.
Right.
But if you surround yourself with good friends who value clarity, and you spend your time reading texts that clarify principles, you cultivate a calm mind. It's a natural osmosis.
So if you are listening to this deep dive right now, maybe sitting in traffic on your commute, I want you to think about the immense weight of that idea. Because the text states very clearly that hierarchy in heaven and nobility and lowliness on earth is not determined by fate, but depends entirely on self-cultivation.
That is a staggering assertion of personal agency. I mean, it rejects the victim mindset entirely.
It places the remote control for your reality firmly in your own hands. But it's also telling you, if your mind is a chaotic mess, if you are burning out, it's because you haven't done the cultivation, you haven't curated your inputs, you haven't chosen the right mountains to stand near.
The responsibility is heavy, but it is also the only path to genuine freedom. However, the sutra is careful to remind the practitioner that grabbing the remote control doesn't mean the channel changes instantly.
Right, which brings us to the timeline of this transformation and the ultimate end state the text is driving us toward. We've talked about moving like flowing water, reading, and seeking confidants. What is the actual pledge the practitioner makes at the end?
So the sutra ends with a direct address to heaven. It's a vow regarding the final condition of the mind. It says, today my heart is like a clear mirror, unstained by dust and impure emotions.
Like a clear mirror. That is the completed factory reset, absolute clarity. But the timeline the author provides to achieve that clear mirror is pretty sobering. It synthesizes all these compounding habits into a brutal progression. It says, today I am ordinary, tomorrow I am mediocre. 10 years of cold and heat, transforming stone into gold. After 50 years old, walking with the gods.
10 years of cold and heat. I mean, we operate in an era of 30-day wellness challenges and weekend retreats that promise total ego death and life transformation.
Oh, totally.
This ancient text looks at that and essentially laughs. It says, no, today you are ordinary. Even if you start this practice, tomorrow you will still be mediocre. It takes a full decade of enduring the literal seasons, the cold and the heat, the ups and downs of life, to even begin turning the raw stone of your mind into gold.
It's so countercultural to the life hack mentality. But that decade of friction makes the idea of the clear mirror feel genuinely earned. To maintain that mirror, the text demands that you let things go. You have to let birth, aging, sickness, and death take their course.
That is the ultimate surrender to the Tao. Accepting the things you cannot control without letting them scratch the surface of your mental mirror.
Okay, but looking closely at this final end state, I want to propose a hypothesis about a massive tension in the text. Let's see if this holds up.
All right, let's hear it.
So the author claims the goal is to be unstained by impure emotions. They strive for perfect neutrality. Writing, right and wrong are not for me to judge, and merits and faults do not weigh on my heart. They are completely detached from outcomes.
Right.
But in the exact same closing pledge, the author loudly declares, I do not commit acts against heaven and reason, and I despise deceit and trickery.
Ah.
How can someone be a completely neutral, unstained mirror who refuses to judge right from wrong while simultaneously saying they despise something? I mean, despising is a fiery act of emotion. Are there two different scorecards operating here?
Your hypothesis hits on the most critical nuance of Eastern spiritual texts. Yes, there are absolutely two distinct scorecards, the external and the internal. Detachment from the external outcomes of the world does not mean the abandonment of your internal moral compass.
So when the text says right and wrong are not for me to judge, it's specifically talking about the external circus.
Exactly that. It's talking about the busy hustle, the endless arguments over who is winning the corporate ladder, the societal definitions of fame and success. You let go of the need to referee the world, and you accept that external merits and faults don't define your core worth.
But internally, the clear mirror requires an absolute rigid adherence to basic principles.
Because deceit and trickery are the very mechanisms that throw dust on the mirror. Think about the cognitive load of telling a lie or manipulating a situation. It requires cunning. It requires you to remember the lie, manage perceptions, and constantly run new background apps to keep the deceit alive.
Oh, wow, yeah.
The author despises deceit not just because it's somehow bad, but because it is horribly inefficient. It is the exact opposite of the natural, yielding flow of water.
So honesty is an efficiency optimization. You aren't emotionally invested in whether the world is fair to you, but you are fiercely, violently protective of your own internal integrity. The text even makes peace with the worst-case external scenario. It says, even if I live a life of poverty with a clear mind and calm spirit, I will ultimately realize my wish.
The poverty is just an external outcome. It's the weather. It doesn't matter if you are enduring the 10 years of cold and heat. What matters is that the mirror remains unstained.
You know, if we zoom out and look at the journey this Morning Sutra has taken us on, it really functions as a masterclass in shifting perspective. We started out floating in the infinite cosmos, realizing how laughably small our daily anxieties actually are.
Which laid the groundwork to understand that spiritual elevation isn't a magical gift. It's the slow, compounding physics of daily habits, moving with the patient power of a flowing stream.
And we redefined what diligence actually means. It is not the exhausting, competitive, modern hustle culture that drains our energy. It's a quiet, steady practice.
We were handed a practical toolkit to achieve that practice, too. Read deeply to build an internal anchor of clear principles and curate your environment by finding confidants who keep you aligned.
Building a fairyland out of what would otherwise just be isolation.
Right.
All of this leading to a decade-long commitment to cultivating a clear mirror mind. A mind that refuses to be stained by the exhaustion of trickery and is entirely detached from the world's scorecard. It's a profound framework for living. But before we wrap up our deep dive today, there is one final, brilliantly unresolvable paradox from the sutra that we need to leave you, the listener, to chew on.
Oh, we definitely have to leave a little dust in the air to settle.
Yeah. Early on in the text, when the author is discussing the immense connection between the human mind and the universe, there's a very bold claim. It says, what the heart desires, so shall things be accomplished. It suggests an unbelievable power in focused intention.
The ability to shape reality through sheer will.
Exactly. But then, as we explored, the text explicitly warns later on, pursuing desires makes it hard to understand life.
It is the ultimate spiritual contradiction.
It really is. So here is the thought to ponder on your own as you go back to the reality of your day. How do you harness that immense cosmic power of a single heart's desire to accomplish your goals, while simultaneously refusing to pursue desires so that your mind remains an unstained mirror?
Yeah, how do you want something deeply without letting the wanting itself become the very background app that crashes your system?
It might take 10 years of cold and heat to figure that out, honestly. But maybe doing a mental factory reset today is the first step. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.